All right, here we are. We are on week 3 of our podcast, which is yet to be named. Apparently, we need some creativity or something. We need to get a name for it. But for now, it's just our podcast. So we have Matt Crowell, who is the lead pastor of Fairfield Foursquare. And I am Crystal Neubauer. I am one of the pastors on staff. And we like to just have discussions about what's going on in the church. We have discussions about what Matt's teaching. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what I'm going to teach this coming Wednesday night at church. So it's just very freeform. So Matt, why don't you start out, just give us a little bit of a high-level overview. We are wrapping up this week, we're wrapping up a series on insecurity. So why don't you give us a high-level overview, some of the things you've talked about, and even some of the things you're going to talk about on the last message of the series.
So we have been talking about insecurity, and the scripture we've been, that's kind of our basis scripture has been, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I love the message, what the message says of Philippians 4:13 is, I can make it through anything in the one who makes me who I am. So this week, and we've been talking about what insecurity looks like and what security looks like, and we've gone over that several times. So we looked at Lot and Abraham. Abraham was very secure, Lot not so much, and Lot in his insecurity was constantly getting in trouble, was, went to Gomorrah. Angel came and told him Gomorrah's going to be destroyed, and you can just plug that in. So a little behind the scenes technical, but Gomorrah is, he's like, we got to leave. It's going to be destroyed. He wouldn't leave. The angel had to grab him by the hand and drag him out. So insecurity just leads to, it almost leads to like, you can't see reality for what it is.
Right.
And Lot ended up living in a cave with his daughters. And of course we know Abraham went on to be the father of many nations, and he's the example of faith for us, especially in the New Testament. And so, so what we're going to end up with is actually, I didn't plan this. So this week we're going to talk about how do you actually make Jesus your security? And then that's going to propel us into April, which we're going to talk about choose Jesus. And of course, goes right along with Easter.
Sure.
And I honestly didn't plan that. I'm horrible at calendars. I have no idea. Laura, our admin, always tells me, do you know what day it is? And I will tell her, no, I have no idea.
And I totally believe that.
Yeah. So she said, well, I even asked her, because I know this freaks people out, but I've never been a huge fan of Easter. Every day's Easter. Yeah. I mean, where we stop and say, we're going to celebrate Jesus' being risen and sacrifice, his sacrifice and then him being risen. I don't know. I've just never been a huge fan. So the Holy Week and all that stuff, I think I don't know. I know people get mad about that, but so I asked Laura, I go, so this is Palm Sunday, right? And she's like, yeah. And my message worked out perfectly. I already had Palm Sunday in there, but I just, for me, Jesus' death and resurrection is something that honestly, the reason that a lot of people are insecure is because they celebrate it one time a year.
Sure.
It's Easter. And then we just go on and we do our thing. So we're going to talk about this week is, how is Jesus how do you make him your security? You can say that, but what does that actually mean on a day-to-day basis? And so we're going to go through that, and we're going to touch on, and I'm going to talk about this, and we'll probably talk about it next week a little more, but the one thing we talked about on Wednesday night, and I worked it into this, it actually works into this this message on Sunday perfectly. So we looked at Genesis 2:5 about about Adam and Eve, and how they were. It said in 2:25, it says, "Now the man and his wife were both naked, but they felt no shame."
Right.
And a lot of people wonder about that. Okay, why did they live naked? And we get stuck on the naked part.
Seems pretty unnatural to us today, right?
Yeah. Some people, but
True.
Most, I should say. So
there was one time, actually, there's a story. One time I was at an event for my job, And the hotel that we were at actually owned part of a beach on an island. So they would take you over on a boat. Well, they didn't tell you that when you got to the island, if you went past the boundaries of their beach, that it was a nude beach. So here I am. I'm just walking on the beach. I'm looking for shells. There were some surprises. So anyway, for some people, it's more natural than others. It did not feel natural to me.
Yeah.
So I turned around in a hurry.
Everybody's had a story like that. Where you go traveling, I actually one of my family members who travels all the time. They did the same exact thing. They were just walking along, and all of a sudden they're like, So to us, being outdoors in public and not having any clothes on is kind of weird.
Yes.
So everybody gets kind of stuck on that. But what does it mean? What did that mean that they were both naked and they felt no shame? I mean, what did that mean? So if you look at Genesis 3:7, it says, at that moment, and this is, so Eve eats of the fruit that she was not supposed to eat of, and Adam gave it to Adam. He did the same. So they sinned. They went against God's one rule. They had one job. They failed. So at that moment, their eyes were open, and suddenly they felt shame at their nakedness. Then they sewed fig leaves together and covered themselves. And then when God came down and was walking in the cool of the day, they hid themselves among the trees. So this is what, and I'm just going to give a little bit of my opinion, and I could be wrong, so I'm just saying this is my opinion, but I don't think Adam and Eve knew at that moment what all evil.
Right.
I don't think that they had all of a sudden at the snap of your fingers, they knew everything there was to know about evil. I don't think that happened at all. I think it took them, Adam lived somewhere around 900 years. I don't think at the end of his life he knew.
Right.
I think he knew a lot, but he didn't know all of it. What happened was, all of a sudden when they sinned, they figured out they were vulnerable. Because you can't be more vulnerable than that.
Yep.
And, that's, so they're totally vulnerable, and they're looking at each other, and all of a sudden, Eve becomes a threat to Adam, and Adam becomes a threat to Eve.
Because they're exposed.
Exposed. And all of a sudden they know that they're exposed. So what's the first thing you do when you're exposed? You immediately try to cover yourself.
Right.
So they tried to cover themselves, and then the next thing you do is try to hide, and they tried to hide from God. So what happened now vulnerability is actually a strength, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But what they realized was, I'm dependent upon, Eve is dependent upon Adam and on God. Adam's dependent upon Eve and on God. Okay, they're both dependent upon God, but there is a dependence between the two of them because they're man and wife.
Yep.
All of a sudden they said, that's too risky.
Yep.
It's too risky to be dependent upon you. It's too risky to be dependent upon God. So what do? We try to cover ourselves, and then we try to run from God when He's the only source.
Yeah, it's self-sufficiency. We find ways to become sufficient in and of ourselves, so we don't need other people or need God.
Right. So in that moment, Adam said, "I'm not secure." Eve said, "I'm not secure. Let's cover ourselves. Now we need to run from God because He's not. He can't provide."
Right.
That thought just came into their head. Before they sinned, they didn't even have that thought.
Yep.
After they sinned, they're like, "Oh my gosh, we're dependent. What are we going to do? Well, we got to figure this out. This thing could dry up, but all of a sudden we could be kicked out of the garden." That's kind of what looks like their thought process. I'm putting words in their mouth, but that looked like their thought process. So here you can see that in all of us. You can see that in yourself. You can see that in other people. That our vulnerability, and so let's take this back. Were they vulnerable before they sinned?
Yeah, they weren't aware of it in the same way. There was no fear with it.
Right. The vulnerability didn't mean weakness.
Right.
Before the fall, vulnerability meant weakness after the fall.
Yep.
Because actually vulnerability before the fall was their strength.
Yep.
Because they said, before, we're totally vulnerable. God's our source for everything. We totally depend upon Him for everything.
Yep.
After the fall, that turned 180 degrees on its head. Oh my gosh, we're dependent upon God for everything. We can't do anything without him.
Yep.
So it went from a positive to a negative. So vulnerability now is actually a strength, and we have to realize that. And that's what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow, is that, Jesus came to this earth and he died for us. And when he died for us, he justified us, which means justification means that in God's eyes, we are completely acquitted. There's no shame. You don't come into his throne room and he's, got a checklist and, this is what you've done wrong this week. It's none of that. It's just the opposite of that. But in order to understand that and walk in it, you have to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And once you understand that vulnerability is a strength, then you understand that what your insecurities are and how to become secure in Jesus. So that's what we're going to kind of dig into tomorrow. And there's no secret, there's no secret sauce. It's just this easy. I believe Jesus is real.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all the Bible says.
Yep.
That's all the Bible says. So that's what we talked about. I guess that's what we've been talking about the whole month, and that's what we talked about on Wednesday night, and then that's how I'm incorporating it in on Sunday. And then from there, we're going to talk more about who Jesus is. Choose Jesus for the month of April. So
okay. That's really good. So what's cool about this, and we really didn't coordinate this, but you had asked me to do the teaching for Wednesday night, which starts at 6:30, and I'd already started putting together some things just based on what you've been talking about on Sunday mornings, based on the stuff we talked about with shame Wednesday night, and they really go hand in hand. And one of the things I was thinking about, so insecurity really is just a form of shame. Because insecurity, it makes you want to hide. So any kind of emotion that you have that makes you want to hide or cover yourself, like Adam and Eve, is just a form of shame. And shame, as we've been defining it, and we defined it Wednesday night, is shame is feeling like there's something wrong with you. Feeling like you're a mistake, feeling like you've messed up, feeling like you're not good enough. And so shame has all these different emotions attached to it. Insecurity is one of them. I would say anxiety is one of them. Anxiety is really the fear of maybe being exposed. It could be the fear that others may figure out you're incompetent in something. I've seen some people get really nervous about that. I know I used to have anxiety. I don't even know if you know this, but I used to have anxiety on Saturday nights. I would have a terrible time falling asleep. Rest of the week, I would sleep like a baby. I would come to a Saturday night and I could not fall asleep. I would toss and turn. And what I figured out is it was anxiety that the next morning I would get up, I'd be on worship team and I'd make a mistake. What is that? That's insecurity. That's fear of getting up there and people figuring out I'm not all that good. So as soon as I dealt with that, I sleep like a baby most Saturday nights, which I appreciate. So all of these different things. Rejection is a feeling of shame. It makes you feel like you're not good enough. And so you want to hide from relationships with other people. So all of those things, anything that makes you want to hide is an emotion that deals with shame. So it's kind of fun. We talked about shame Wednesday night in church. On Thursday, I went home after work, and my big dog, Sadie, she even though she's an old dog and she doesn't get near as much trouble as she used to, she doesn't chew things like she used to, she still gets in my trash from time to time. And I always know, sometimes she'll get the trash and she'll take it under the dining room table and chew it up. Sometimes she'll do it on the rug in the living room. But I always know when she's been in the trash, because the moment I walk in the door, she runs and she hides and she won't make eye contact with me. So
I think that is so weird about dogs.
It's like dogs can feel shame because it's not guilt. It's shame. Yeah. It's like, I'm not making eye contact with you.
It says shame.
Yes, it does.
I'm so ashamed.
That's right.
There's an awesome video on YouTube of a guy that comes in. He's got like 3 dogs that just ripped up everything. And when he comes in with the camera, they won't even
look.
The head goes. It's so funny.
And I just thought that's such a good picture of us. You know, we walk around and we make eye contact with people, but in a figurative sense, we don't make eye contact with people because we feel insecure, or we feel rejected, or whatever that emotion is. And so, you know, the moment Sadie knew she was in trouble, but the moment that I called her over to me and I got down on her level and I started petting her, the shame was gone.
Yeah. It's immediate.
And she's completely forgotten what she did. I didn't forget because I had to clean it up. But, that's the exact same thing that we need. We need someone to get eye level with us and say, okay, yeah, you messed up, but we're still going to have a relationship. Or yeah, maybe you feel rejected, but we're still going to have a relationship. I'm still going to love you no matter what. And so it's funny. The same thing that restored my relationship with Sadie is the same thing that as humans we need. That's how shame gets healed. So good.
Well, I think on, and I'm going to say her name wrong. The video we showed on Wednesday night was
Brene
Brown.
Yep.
Okay. So Brene Brown, just search in vulnerability TED, and it'll come up. She gave a TED talk. We've talked about it a couple times here, and then I showed the video. A lot of pastors I don't think show the video because she swears. So there was swearing in our church. It wasn't the first time.
It won't be the last.
No. So
we're real, people. We're real.
Not me. I'm not swearing.
Never.
No.
Never.
Well, I'm not. I'm like, you swear? But anyway, we showed it, and it was funny. I had somebody come up to me later and go, when did she swear? So, but there was a part of the video that was very telling.
Yep.
She said, how many people in here think vulnerability is weakness? The whole crowd raised their hand.
Yeah.
She goes, how many people? And I think the talk that she was at was, because I believe this was the same TED Talk. There was actually a woman and a man who got up and gave a talk, and the man had raped the woman years before.
Wow.
And they go around talking about this, how he had realized what he'd done and they had reconciled. So
Crazy.
That's vulnerable.
That's vulnerable.
So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what that conference was around. So she said, how many people on this stage came up here and were vulnerable and you saw it as strength? Everybody.
Yeah. It's courage, yeah.
And that's what people don't realize. This whole facade, when we put on this facade that I'm perfect, everything's good, I've got it all covered. When we put that facade on, people see it. I mean, it is, everybody knows it.
Yep.
Everybody sees it. But when we're vulnerable and we show, hey, I screwed up.
Yeah.
And everybody can see that people will admire you so fast.
Yeah.
I mean, they follow leaders like that. They follow leaders that, hey, I made a mistake. I screwed up. I'll probably do it again. In fact, I know I'll do it again. So
That's right.
Let's keep going.
Yeah.
And that is what there's, we have it backwards in our head.
Yeah.
It shows weakness, but actually it's when somebody else shows vulnerability, you're like, wow, that's strong.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a dissonance up there. So.
And I actually think too, we go back to the garden. When Adam and Eve sinned and they covered themselves, that immediately there was a barrier between them. Mm-hmm. And then when God came in the garden to walk with them, just like he always had, they ran and they hid. And so I think we think of it as a weakness, but it creates barriers in relationship with one another. So you're talking about leadership, and I'm a leader. I teach leadership. You really can't connect to people without vulnerability. Mm-hmm. I know some of the most charismatic, articulate leaders, and they can't connect with people. And the reason is because they put on that facade. So I think it's absolutely crucial when it comes to relationship. So shame, what shame does is it makes you want to hide. It makes you want to put up that barrier. It makes you want to be fake. And then you end up not having good relationships because of it. Mm-hmm. Now, on the flip side, if shame causes you to hide, then the antidote to shame is to expose what's going on inside of you.
Get naked, right?
Pretty much, yes. That is the reality, right? And
it's in the Bible.
We can say it. So he cusses and he talks about nakedness. So that's your pastor, folks, right there. Yeah. But it feels very much like that. In fact, I have a good friend, and sometimes we'll get in these discussions, and like it's just so awkward. I've actually said I feel like I'm naked. I was fully clothed, and yet I feel you feel very exposed and naked. One of the things that when I was preparing for Wednesday night, I came across a quote, and I really like this. It says that nothing healthy grows in the dark. So if you think about it, trees need sunlight, flowers need sunlight, fruit needs sunlight, vegetables need sunlight. All of those things I love, right?
Are mushrooms evil?
I think mushrooms are evil. I like to find them, but I don't eat them. What grows in the dark? That's exactly right. So you have mold spores, fungi.
Fungi.
I wanted to say fungi. You're a fun guy.
Fungi.
Yeah, you're a fun guy. Anyway. And like moss, right? Moss thrives in the dark. It
she
was
didn't like your
funny, and you know it. You like my puns.
You know everybody's waiting for.
I'm a punny person.
There's a fungus among us.
She's right over there. And we're fired. Okay, anyway, but the reality is, right, really healthy things grow in the light. And that's the same thing with us. There's nothing that, anything we would seek to keep hidden or to cover ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about going out on Facebook and putting all your business out there. I'm talking about having one or two relationships in your life where you can confide and you can expose yourself, where you can be fully known.
Yeah.
Anything we hide from people becomes unhealthiness in our lives. And we see all through the New Testament, we see that there's light and there's darkness, and we need to bring the things in darkness into light. I think Ephesians chapter 5 says that. So that's a really clear pattern. You know, all of the emotions that are associated with shame, so rejection, insecurity, anxiety, you name it, all of those thrive when you keep them hidden. And I think the other thing I was thinking a lot about this week is that we all find excuses to stay hidden. Mm-hmm. Even this friend that I feel naked in front of sometimes, there was a situation where I was feeling kind of foolish about something. And feeling foolish is just another word for shame, by the way.
Yeah. And
I found all these reasons why I couldn't tell her what I felt foolish about. And they were very valid, good reasons, right? Mm-hmm. And the moment I just started talking about what I felt foolish about, all of that was gone, because I brought it out into the light. But, you know, we find all kinds of reasons. Maybe we justify keeping things hidden because we feel like we don't have anyone we can trust. I think that's an excuse. Maybe we justify it by staying busy, so we don't take the time to.
Oh, that's a big one.
It's a huge one. I'm just too busy to have relationships like that. Right? Maybe we justify it by feeling like no one will understand us, which I think is a big lie that a lot of people struggle with. It's just a lie. It's not the reality. I think we would actually be surprised how many other people do understand us and the things we struggle with. I think we would be surprised when we expose ourselves, how often other people would say, I feel the exact same way.
Right.
In fact, if Adam and Eve had just had an honest conversation, if Adam had just said, you know what, Eve, I'm feeling kind of vulnerable right now. I'm not sure I like this.
Yeah.
What would she have said? Me too, Adam,
Me too, yep.
Right? And I think that would be very true for all of us. So I think we come up with all these excuses. At the end of the day, all of those excuses are just forms of pride. Right?
Yep.
I mean, you're good.
Well, one of the things that several people said this to me after Wednesday night. I shouldn't say, it was a few people. So vulnerability, I'm not going to be vulnerable. I can get hurt.
Yeah.
Actually, if you're vulnerable, you can't get hurt. If you're actually vulnerable, you can't get hurt.
In a godly way.
Yep. Well, I mean, because first of all, vulnerability does not mean you go up to somebody and tell them your deepest, darkest secrets.
Yeah.
They could turn around and tell everybody. They're human.
Yeah.
And I know, especially, I know some pastors and, that are really guarded because they, befriended somebody. And it's not exclusive to pastors. But, they got burned. And it's a little more public sometimes with pastors or business owners. People that are kind of in the public eye. But that's not what vulnerability is. Vulnerability is you are who you are. You're real in front of other people. And that doesn't mean you're telling them everything.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're doing that. Now, because when you're truly, like we said, before the fall, you're vulnerable, you're totally open to God being your source.
Yep.
Well, after the fall, if you're going to be the after fall vulnerable, that means everything around me can kill me.
Yep.
And that's not real vulnerability. That's insecurity.
Yep.
And that's
fear.
That's fear. Insecurity means it means a state of being or uncertain or anxiety about oneself, lack of confidence, a state of being open to danger or threat, lack of protection. That's not vulnerability. That's insecurity. Right. So vulnerability is just saying, somebody says to me, or somebody comes up to you and says, I really don't like what you did here. And you going, you might be right.
Right.
I mean, honestly, or on the flip side, not just on the flip side saying, I wish you didn't take it that way, but I didn't mean it that way. But, knowing this person is being offended that's their choice.
That's their choice, yeah.
I've had people come to me and say, you were harsh about something. And if I thought about it, I was like, I was.
Yeah.
That was too harsh.
Yeah.
And, I apologize. I've also had people come to me and say, upset about this. Well, and if you're vulnerable, you'll go, well, that's your choice.
Right.
You chose to be that way. And, it's not on me. And being vulnerable just means ultimately that Paul says this a lot, I answer to him. I don't answer to you.
Yeah.
Jesus said, and we're going to talk about this actually Sunday too. Jesus said, I don't answer to you guys.
Yeah.
I answer to the Lord. If you're upset at me, that's your deal. But in Paul's case, if I did something to offend you, I ask for your forgiveness, Yeah. So vulnerability is not, I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they're like, well, I'm not going to just go be vulnerable with anybody. Well,
Right.
I'm not telling you to go tell your...
Yes. Yeah.
But if you can find a friend that you
Yep.
can trust,
Yep.
then, on that side of it, if you're constantly holding back, that friendship, especially in marriage, that's where it's big.
There's a barrier there.
There's going to be a barrier.
Yeah. So I want to come back to just something you said, and then we'll get back to putting yourself out there and exposing yourself in that way that we're talking about here. But what I want to come back to, so you mentioned if somebody comes to you and they say, I really don't like the way that you do that. A way that we might hide and not be vulnerable in that conversation is to get defensive.
Right.
Being defensive is hiding. So I think you're exactly right. Your response could be, you're right. I messed up. Will you forgive me? That would be a way of not hiding. Another way of not hiding could also be, I really think you need to look at something here. I think you need to examine what's going on. So I think that's the key is in your response, are you hiding from people or are you being genuine to who you are? So I just wanted to make that point, how it all ties together there. So I just made the statement that any reasons we have for staying hidden are forms of pride. And I think this goes back to Adam and Eve too, that pride is really just not wanting to rely on God or to rely on others. It's that self-sufficiency we talked about earlier. And so we come up with all these reasons that we can't trust others, all these reasons we can't trust God, we can't be open with others, we can't be open with the Lord. I do think they go hand in hand. I have found that people who believe they're open with the Lord but can't be open with others aren't actually that open with the Lord. I've found that people who tend to be able to be open, and again, I'm not talking about airing your dirty laundry. We don't recommend that. I'm talking about having one or two people in your life that you can just be that open with. I find that carries over into their relationship with the Lord. There seems to be a direct correlation there. So I was looking at James. I was reading in James this week, and I came across James chapter 5, verse 16. And I'm going to read this in the Amplified version because I just like how it says it. So it says, confess your sins to one another. And then it goes on, it expounds it, to confess your false steps or your offenses. So thinking about, what are the things that you want to hide from others? They are the feelings of anger that you have, the feelings of unforgiveness, maybe the way you've messed up. They're the feelings of being rejected. It could be, you could put insecurity in there. It could say confess your insecurities to one another. And then it goes on, and then pray for one another that you may be healed and restored. And that word restored is it's talking about being brought to wholeness. Now, what's kind of interesting is this is in the context of physical healing. And yet what it's saying is these things that go on inside of you that you need to confess have a direct impact on your physical body. So this is the anxiety you've talked about, all of that. So here's really what I've been thinking about. I watched a sermon by Bill Johnson a couple of weeks ago, and he made this statement, and it has stuck with me. What you confess, you forsake. And forsake means to abandon or leave behind.
Yep.
So whatever you confess, if you're struggling with something and you confess that to the Lord, to others, sometimes both is part of the process. In James here, it's saying to confess to one another. So whatever you're struggling with, when you confess that, then you forsake it.
Right.
So when you bring it into the light, then you can leave it behind. So if we want to be whole, if we want to be people who aren't held back by insecurity, if we want to be people that aren't stuck because we feel rejected or hurt by things, we have to bring it out into the light. That is vulnerability. Yeah. We have to stop hiding those things that we have inside of us.
We said that stuff, when you hide, it just festers.
Yes.
And it turns into I mean, it just grows.
Yep.
The Bible says it grows into a fortress.
Yeah.
2 Corinthians 10:3-6, it says it turns into a fortress.
Yep.
And a fortress, it says in Proverbs, is almost impossible to take down.
Yeah.
So if you're not gonna deal with it, and I'll be honest, people that are, and I'm reaching that age, people that are on their 50s and their 60s and their 70s can almost be lost.
Yeah.
Because they get to a point where this thought life, they've never dealt with it. It's this massive fortress. They can't see it.
Yep.
And it's almost impossible to get them to deal with it.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And it, I've never had anything in my life that I've hidden and ever had a good result out of that, ever, right? So that's actually my next thing I was going to say, is that whatever you hide from will imprison you, but whatever you confess will free you. And what you hide in your life will end up becoming your master. And that's exactly, so we have people who are getting later in life, they've hidden these things, they've held on to them, they haven't addressed them, they haven't been vulnerable about them. It's their master in their lives now.
And Jesus said it'll always be exposed.
In some way.
Always.
Yeah. Yep.
Whatever's hidden will always be exposed.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of people, they walk in with that. I mean, I say they wear a billboard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why not deal with it?
Yep.
Why wear the billboard, that says, hey, I'm really insecure, but I'm hiding it by talking all the time, or, whatever their issue is.
Yep.
Why don't you have the billboard that says, hey, I'm a mess, but I'm perfect in Jesus.
Yeah, there you go.
Much better.
I like that. One of my favorite Foursquare speakers in our denomination is a guy named Jim Scott. And he used to come out to Bible college, and then he has spoken at some pastors' retreats here in the area. And he said once, and this was years ago, and I still think about it, if you don't do your own laundry, the Lord will hang it out on the line.
Yep.
And that's not because the Lord is cruel, and he's like, I want you to air your laundry out here and let everybody see what's going on. But the reality is, the things that we don't address in us, other people do see. And the Lord allows that so that we get in places where we have to deal with it.
And if it's, not only will it affect you,
yeah.
If you're a father, it affects your kids.
Yeah.
And if you're a mother, it affects your kids.
Yeah.
And your marriage.
Yeah. In fact, when I was doing this research for shame, I came across this article, and it talked about how shame is contagious and transferable. And if you have parents in a family, they've done these studies, if you have parents in a family that have suffered from shame, their kids will suffer from the same shame.
Yep.
Because it is a learned behavior. It is a transferable thing. Which
and I've
it's
told,
pretty scary.
I told a parent this. I've told parents this before. They're super upset about their kids' behavior.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, where'd they learn it?
Looks familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it's familiar. And of course, what? And I'll go, you do this.
Right.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
And, shocks them. But, we laugh all the time when we see Bailey or Colton do something we do. But that's, at least they're doing something that's funny.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. And not,
Right.
But we have seen negative.
Yeah.
We've seen negative, and they're mimicking. Ooh, we got to change that.
Right.
So yeah,
that's the Lord letting your laundry be hung up on the line, right? And it doesn't feel gracious, but it is Him being gracious. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So just a couple of other things. So I had said that whatever you hide in your life will become your master. So if you hide insecurity becomes the master of how you think. There's your fortress that you talked about. If you hide feelings of rejection, that becomes the master of how you love people, how you relate to people. And so if that's true, then whatever you expose allows Jesus to become the master of that. And so I've been beginning to think about vulnerability in terms of, what do I want Jesus to become the master of in my life next, and how can I be vulnerable about that?
Yeah.
So if it is an area of insecurity, okay, I need to find ways to be vulnerable, whether that's with the Lord, whether that's with somebody else. But how can I stop hiding this so I can bring it into the light and it can be dealt with?
And where is Hebrews 12:1, and so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God, because He has done for you all He's done for you. Let me be a living and holy sacrifice. the kind that we'll find to be acceptable. This is the true way of worship, a sacrifice. What
Yeah.
are we putting on the altar?
Yeah.
This stuff.
Yeah. This is the real stuff, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah. When you can begin to deal with this stuff, it's interesting. You know, some people struggle so much with tithing, but when you deal with the fear that comes with tithing and trusting God, tithing's not an issue. So we have so many things that we focus on and we try to fix, but it's this stuff we're hiding that is actually the issue we have to address.
Mm-hmm. No, that's yep. So that all goes together. Now you're talking about that on Wednesday?
You got it. I'm going to talk about that Wednesday night and just a little bit more of how do we start to do this. And it is a process. It's not an overnight thing. It's how can I be more vulnerable in a way that God wants me every time I come and spend time with him or every time I spend time with a friend? How can I just step more into that? Because it's not a flip of the switch thing.
No.
You know?
It does, and it takes effort.
Yeah.
And it's I think this is something that is challenging.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of, I think in our day and age, this is, we're not going to do, we could do a lot of self-help stuff. That's
Right.
really, that sounds good.
Yep.
And I think it'd be very popular, but I don't see lives change through
Yeah.
that.
It's not transformational.
It's not.
Yeah.
And so the things we talk about, they're tough. They're, I guess for me, I've watched families fall apart, and I'm talking about Christian families.
Yeah.
I've watched families fall apart. I've watched marriages fall apart, and it's all because this stuff was not taken care of.
Yeah.
Because a wife has a bunch of shame that she doesn't know how to take care of, or the husband has a bunch of shame they don't know how to. And
Yeah.
then, like you said, it goes down the next generation. We actually
Yep.
talked about that a
Yeah.
few weeks ago.
Yep.
How it goes down to the next generation, and then it just keeps repeating itself. I would rather step in front of that and try to stop that. There's some that we've ministered to here that have, I don't want to work on it
Yep.
right now and step back.
Yep.
That's fine. I think they'll come back. But we've planted seeds,
Yeah.
and I love and she's out. I can't go without talking about Michelle. Michelle just lets out there, what did she say? Did she say she was stuck on stupid or something? Was that what her?
She's stuck on stupid.
I was stuck on stupid.
It's a Michelleism.
Yeah. But she's like, she used to come to me and this stuff's hard.
Yeah.
What you talk about's hard. And then
Yeah.
now she's coming to me and she's like, I just can't believe how much this has changed my life.
Yeah.
And she's stuck with it.
Yep.
And I've seen that. I just really want to see people change, because it's so rare for us to see healthy marriages. It's so rare to see a healthy family dynamic.
Yeah.
And that is sad.
Right.
That is so
The church is the place you should be able to go and see those things.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do here is create that small group where that tight-knit group that
Yeah.
we're a mess, and we all know we're a mess, and we're fixing our messes,
Yep.
and we're not afraid to tell people we're vulnerable.
Yeah.
In fact, we've had some conversations with people about that. Hey, sorry. I had somebody come to me and say, hey, sorry, I didn't handle this right. I said, you know what? I didn't handle it right either. So I need to
Right.
say sorry to you.
Right.
So it's that's how family is.
Yeah.
We should be kind of messy and
And modeling that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's because we're a family here. It's funny, the squabbles. I've learned when to step in and when not to.
Yeah.
Just kind of let them work out. And that was kind of one of the toughest part when I first started being a pastor. Is I wouldn't jump into everything, but just let people work it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, I had someone come to me the other day, and it's someone in our church. It's a young lady. I really respect her. And she made this statement to me, exactly what you're talking about, that basically she said, I'm going to do this hard work because I didn't have a good upbringing, and I'm going to make sure my daughter has that.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stories that we're hearing, or that's what we're seeing. People are getting more and more committed to this. And even people who are like, I don't even know how to do this. I just know I want it and I'm going to start. So are you hearing other things from people, just feedback about the messages and what they're doing in their lives?
Yeah, it's the people that are the most vulnerable that are soaking this in the fastest.
Yeah.
So two people who are just very sweet and open. One of them's Jenny, my director,
Yeah.
my daycare.
She's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and
I'm a big fan.
She just came in and she was like, that video was so awesome. It didn't offend her in the least.
Right.
Because she's, and this is the video of
Brene Brown.
Brene Brown.
Yeah.
And she just loved it. Well, of course she loves it because she's super vulnerable, you know.
Yeah.
She will cry. I can make her cry.
I love it.
All you have to do is just, oh, look how sweet that one of our daycare kids.
Yeah.
Aren't they sweet? And then tears start.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I love the tenderness that God created in her. It's so awesome.
So, so the feedback has been on that and on the stuff we've been talking about. Really, a lot of feedback on what we've been talking about earlier in the year. The changing how you think, rewiring everything, taking care of thoughts and things like that. So, I see a strengthening of the team, of the group that comes here, and it was messy.
Yeah.
And
it still is messy.
It still is messy, and I've had to take, some of the leaders and say, yep, the mess is good,
Right.
that's fine. And it's strengthening things. So I'm really excited to see kind of where we're at this time next year. Just keep building on this and keep pushing. I'm going to keep pushing things, keep pushing people to just get out there. I mean, it's when you push somebody to face something, it can get really messy quick.
Yeah.
But I don't look at people and say, what if this person were to leave, or what if this person were to get really upset with me? I'd rather risk that and see them grow. Churches get very perverted when you just try to keep everybody happy.
Yeah. Well, because then everything has to stay hidden, right? And what grows in the dark? Not good things.
Yeah.
In fact, you said to me, we met around Christmas time. We'll meet from time to time just to talk about leadership development and some changes we're making. And we had met, and you had actually said, I want to push my leaders because I want to bring things out into the light.
Right.
And what does that cause? It causes good things, right? That's where fruit and trees and flowers and vegetables grow. And so you're exactly right. The things we're doing now, the hard work to bring things into the light, will grow good things down the line.
Yeah. And I see that happening. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some good things. So how long have we been going? 43
Sweet.
minutes. Okay.
I actually wanted to ask you, one of the really good things we have going on, and I think it is because some of our leaders have done some of this hard work, and one of those would be Josh. So Josh, who is over our children's ministry, is just, he is kicking butt.
He is.
He's doing a phenomenal job. So this is an example, I think, of where he's stepped into what God has called him to do, and he's been willing to, even I think he was nervous about stepping into this new venture, and he just said, "Okay, God, I'm just going to put it out there." That's vulnerability, and he's just trusting God. So some of the cool things that we're just seeing come out of there. Do you want to talk about that? What you see happening with the children's ministry?
Well, first of all, it's very rare to have in the church male leadership.
Yep.
So that was the best thing that came out of it. The second thing was that's rare is you'll have somebody volunteer and then say, "Okay, tell me what to do." I am not that type of leader.
Yeah.
If you're going to volunteer, you need to understand what you're going to do. I'm not a micromanager. I'm one that steps back and lets people go. Yep. And so he had. In fact, we sat down and talked, and he goes, "So my meeting expectations?" And I'm like, I said, "Josh, I got to be honest with you. I will not catch up to you. You so far exceeded my expectations that I'll probably be caught up to you by the end of this year."
Yeah, that's right. I love it.
And I was being serious.
Yeah.
So for the first time, we have, and this is what I wanted last year. I've actually wanted it since I got here. We have a rotation where people are helping in kids every 6 weeks. I think is how far it is.
Yeah.
Which means people aren't burnt out. People aren't going to be, it's not going to be on you every single week to be in that. And if more people are involved, that just gets even stronger.
Yeah.
So he's got the rotation down.
And he's training them.
He's got them all trained. They were here this morning doing more training.
Yep.
People are involved in children's that I didn't think would be involved in children's.
It's really cool to see the list.
Yep. So that is just, and that's a huge part of our church. And Josh is they were laughing about this last time because we were talking about him, Mr. and Miss America.
Josh and Tiffany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you say? Ken and Barbie. That's what we said,
Yeah.
right? Yes, Ken and Barbie. They were giggling because Tiffany's on the worship team. And, well, Josh is too, actually. But the children's is set to grow really quickly.
Yeah.
Which is important because we have a huge daycare. And now from that, we can build onto that and start integrating them together a little more. So that is a bright, shining spot. And I'm just super, super happy with it. I can't wait to see where it goes because we're remodeling that big room. We've started. We took out the doors, the big swinging doors. Next, we're going to go into that room and kind of clear it out. There's an old sound stage. It's where they used to have church years ago.
Right. Back in my day.
Back in your day.
Yeah.
And then, so we're going to clear out that room. We're going to put in a new floor. There's just a lot of stuff that's going to be happening. So that is rolling forward for the first time.
And I think what's cool is our kids are excited about it. Our kids know they are important to our church because of all the structure Josh is putting in place, even just how he's setting up the room and doing things. I think our kids are feeling like this is their church. Yeah. It's not their parents' church that they happen to tag along. Like, no, they're excited to go and see Josh.
So I talked to a mother, and I think this has happened twice, 2 different mothers, I think. I was like, where's your kids? She goes, I had to ground them. And I'm like, from church? And she goes, it's the only thing that will work.
That gets their attention.
Yeah. Okay, well, you can't go to church. And they just freak. And I said, well, you know what? Honestly, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
If that's what you have to do, then that's what you have to do. But I love that's just good all the way around.
Yeah. So to recap then, so we have a pastor that talks about nakedness. He shows videos where people cuss, and we have parents at our church who ground their kids from church.
From church, yes.
So yeah. We're not your average
First 2 may be a negative, but I don't swear.
No, I'm not saying you swear. Yeah. No, we're just pretty real.
Some people swear at me.
Sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, under their breath. Yeah. All part of leadership, right?
Oh, I can see it. People think they're hiding it. They're not hiding it. I can see it. When you're standing up front, you can tell what's going on. Like,
That's true.
I made them mad.
All right. Well, anything else you want to share just about things happening in the daycare or in the church that are coming up you want people to know about or that you're excited about?
I think the daycare is really rolling forward now. We've got a new co-director. We've got a really good admin. And Jenny, so we're going to start rolling forward with that. We're going to change the daycare to a more of a learning center, like a Montessori. And we've got some training. The state actually got a hold of us, and we're doing this training. We'll be the only private daycare that will implement some. It's positive behavior something. It's this long name, but we're going to be doing all that. So that is going to be going forward. And I'm really excited about that. And then, we've got some things in the works. I don't know if I want to say too much, but we've got some other big stuff in the works.
And I know we're going to redo a playground. So to raise some money for that, we're having a yard sale in May. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have some more information about that. And also we're just cleaning out some more spaces in our church. We just have stuff that they'll go in that yard sale. So that I think people will see the effects of that too. That's going to help both the daycare and the church to get some of those spaces cleaned out.
And then you and I talked about this right before the podcast, but we'll have the new website up here pretty soon. And then you can get this podcast and all the sermons on Podbean, iTunes as well. It's for Fairfield Foursquare. Just search that in iTunes. Our YouTube, this will go up on our YouTube channel. All this is Fairfield Foursquare. Yep. So, and then our website is also fairfieldfoursquare.com.
We're original.
I can't say that again.
Around here.
Yes, in that original. Yeah. So, but we're gonna keep as far as the media, these types of things. I'd like to change it up. Me teaching all the time is boring.
And we're gonna bring some new people into the podcast. Maybe we'll bring Ken and Barbie. That'd be fun.
Oh, that'd
So
be
she
a
could just
riot. Yes.
Yeah, she's a quick talker.
Yes, we have to do that. No, I
Yep.
can't wait to expand and do some other stuff. What was the other thing I was going to say? I was going to say something else. I can't remember.
Things coming up, changes we're making.
I don't remember.
Okay.
It'll come to me right after we're
Well.
done. But it's I'm just the puzzle.
Yes. Puzzle pieces.
Yes, it's at our house.
Yes. So you want me real quickly? So the puzzle we talked about last Sunday is that so a puzzle, when you dump it out of a box, it feels like it's a big mess, but it's actually all the pieces are there. It's all complete. That is us.
Yes.
We are complete. There's nothing lacking in us, and yet the puzzle pieces have to be put together. So.
If you go to Podbean, we have that message up, and I have a picture of the puzzle.
Oh, sweet.
And I got roped into the puzzle.
I love it.
We had to
It's
find
2,000 pieces. It's huge.
Yeah, we couldn't find all the edge pieces.
Oh.
I could not have dinner until we found the edge pieces. She said that's not true. But Bailey found them.
Yeah, I heard that Bailey's pretty awesome at finding edge
He
pieces.
is. He wants to help
Yep.
with the puzzle, but yeah, now it's it. So the puzzle's like taking over part of the house.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show Natalie had shared that Bailey found those missing edge pieces, and the exact thing we said is sometimes you just need somebody else to come and help you find your pieces, right?
Yes. Yep.
And that is so true. It's why we don't do discipleship alone.
I don't
It's why
know
we
if
do it
Bailey's
together.
the best one though, because all I heard was, "I can find them better than you can,
Yeah.
Dad. I found 4, you found 0. My eyes are better." Was it 3? He's in my face.
Yeah. So maybe some humility to work on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not much
some
there.
some opportunity for growth there.
Yeah.
Maybe Josh can work that into a future children's church. Yes. Just real subtle.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not talking about you, Bailey, but I might be talking about you.
Yes. Yeah.
I love the kid's confidence. He's a lot of fun.
Oh, he doesn't lack any. Yeah.
That's good. When applied well, it's a good thing, right?
He's been practicing his recorder.
Yes.
When I tell him he's doing a great
Yeah.
job, he says, "I know."
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's practicing the recorder at home, and yeah, he's when we say I recognize that song. Well, of course you did.
Yeah.
Because so the challenge was, can you play 2 songs or 1 song on 2 recorders at once? And he did.
I heard he did this. Yeah.
Yes. 1 recorder in each nostril. And he found a song he could play with 1 hand, and he did really good.
Maybe we need to bring him on the podcast. I mean,
I think
that's
praise
a
and
talent.
worship
Oh gosh.
up there with it in his nose. No. He would love it. Don't-
Yeah, he would.
Don't
Yeah.
mention it to him.
Yeah.
He will. He'll.
I'm gonna tell him your dad said
No.
you can be on worship team. He's
No.
asked me before. So he got a
I know.
ukulele for Christmas last
Yep.
year, and he came up to me. He's like, "When do I get to play on worship team?"
I
I'm
was like, yeah.
buddy, you got a ways to go."
When you learn to play it. He's like,
I
well,
love
learn
it.
to play it. And that just came automatically.
Do I have to
No.
practice that?
Yeah.
When do I get to be on worship team? Yeah, I love
Okay.
it.
All right. I think we've talked out all of our stuff.
Yeah, probably more than we should have.
Yeah.
So, that's good. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week then.
All right.